Yeah. What do you think? So, like a common, well, what's your foreign policy? If I had to say, what do you think our foreign policy should look like? What do you think it should be? Like mine is, people might call it isolationist. I don't think it is, but I don't think we should be going to war unless Congress declares it. I don't think any sort of war action should be under executive authority other than persecuting a war that we declare. And then on top of that, I don't think we should be involved in any conflicts whatsoever unless it directly involves imminent threat to the United States. I don't think we should be in any entangling alliances like NATO, for example. And I think it causes conflicts like we have going on right now. I think if we had agreed to what Putin said, his number one stipulation with a peace treaty with Zelensky was Ukraine will never become a part of NATO. And the Biden administration didn't agree with that. I think if Trump was in office, based on what he said, policy, he would have said that's fine.
So you basically said Trump would have capitulated to Putin, and now Putin controls who gets in and out of NATO.
I mean,
that makes no sense.
Call it, but I don't agree with NATO in the first place. Number one, and
well,
number two,
yeah. So then that'd be a difference between us. I think that NATO is important and does have value, and it shows just to set a norm for developing countries in the world, and to say NATO is important in that sense.
We can have treaties with each of those countries.
Yeah. Right, but if it's not
that. But I don't agree with this large treaty organization that binds us into things, and then I don't agree that it's capitulation to Putin.
It's absolutely. If Putin is deciding who gets in and who gets into NATO,
but they share a border with them. So in other words,
so what?
If there were, because and this is what I find, because like. I went to, for example, I used to go to anti-war protests back in the 2000s for Iraq and Afghanistan. And the people who were there were libertarians and leftists. So I talked to a lot of those. And we used to agree on the same concepts. For example, what would we do? How would we feel if a foreign government had a treaty with Mexico and we were slowly but surely moving missiles closer and closer to our border?
Missile process.
And then they signed a treaty with Mexico that said if any conflict ever happens between us and Mexico, they're going to attack us. I don't think we would be like, yeah, that's fine. You guys can do that. I think we would have a problem with that. So in other words, he doesn't have a problem. He doesn't have a problem with NATO per se. He has a problem with border states
being protected by NATO. Right, but he's not letting him determine who's in and out of NATO is 100% capitulation. I mean,
you're avoiding what I just said.
Whether they're neighbors or not, it doesn't make it, And
how is it any of our business?
It's a national security threat for Russia, which you have to understand.
Of course it is. Yeah, and they have to operate to protect their own country. But the problem is, when you border Ukraine, that's fine. Sure. When you border Ukraine in NATO, you border the U.S., and they don't fucking want that.
Right.
And
Ukraine
have that.
Is also not part of NATO right now.
Just like any other war that we've ever fought after World War II, I don't think this has anything to do with anything other than money and power. I think this has more to do with trying to stifle Russia's oil production and keeping them away from the cold water, the cold water ports that are in Ukraine. And that was also part of their peace agreement too.
Yeah, I gotta pee.
And
I'll be in a few minutes.
Well, I gotta mute your mic there, Bert. That was part of the agreement too. And Zelensky was ready to sign that. And ironically, that's what he ran on. He ran on having a peace agreement with Putin. That's why elected him. Yeah, they turned around and said no. So I think this has to.
Zelensky's not the aggressor, though. Zelensky's not the aggressor.
I'll land my plane here, and then you can respond.
Go ahead.
So what I believe is going on now is just another example of American imperialism, and the left used to be against that, and I feel like now, because they want to win an election, they're okay with it.
Leftists still are. But your idea that, of course, Zelensky ran on living cooperatively with Russia, he would have no choice. So he's not the aggressor. Putin is the aggressor.
What do you mean he has no choice? He wasn't running to get reelected by Putin and the Russian people. He was running to get reelected by the Ukrainian people.
Because Ukraine attacking Russia is suicide.
They're attacking right now.
That'd be like Japan attacking us. I mean, Zelensky is not the aggressor. I mean, he's not wanting to take over Russia, right?
Let's not forget that.
I mean,
Victor,
who's trying to take over who?
Well, Victor, what's his name? I always forget his last name. He was very pro-Russian, right? And, I get it. I even think that it was wrong of Putin to go in and take Crimea because, granted, he used the excuse to liberate his people, but now that we're finding out that Crimea has one of the largest natural gas deposits in the world under it, and, at the time, Exxon, or maybe it was Exxon, I know Shell definitely, they were helping them get to it because they didn't quite have the money or the infrastructure to get to that natural gas. And obviously Putin was like, oh, no, I'm going to go liberate my people. I wouldn't say Putin's in the right for sure, but at the same time, Victor, I don't know if anybody knows his last name, I always forget it, he was very pro-Russian, and then that coup in 2014 that overthrew their democratically run process, it seems that Zelensky was installed, that's just my theory at this point, but it seems
that's proven. That was a coup that we orchestrated.
Yeah.
The United States is the aggressor in this situation. Yeah.
That's how I see it. Again, I don't see. Hold on. I don't see any. I ask the left all the time. Can you explain how this is not just another example of American imperialism, and they can never? It always turns into Putin bad, and again, I just said, I used to have these arguments with Republicans, but when Republicans were in power, I'm having the same arguments that I did with Republicans now with liberals.
Well, imperialism would mean that we were taking over the country. I mean, imperialism would mean we were establishing something.
Wait a minute. What do you call a CIA?
We're not going to be in control of Ukraine.
Yes, we are. We put him in power. He's our puppet. What do you mean? We don't. Wait a minute. Let's backtrack here. The left has always agreed with libertarians that our three-letter agencies have overthrown plenty of governments since the 1950s.
Oh, sure.
And we install these puppet dictators so that we can control. We don't control nations by sending armies and conquering them anymore. We do it by orchestrating insurrections and coups, and we install our puppets. We did that. That's why the Ayatollah is currently in power, because we overthrew Mossadegh in the 1950s. And what did we do that for? Because he wanted to nationalize American and British oil interests.
So your definition is exerting any influence on any country is imperialism. Then you're right.
I'm not.
If you're expanding imperialism to mean that, then yeah, you're all right.
What other definition is that? What do you call that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't physically have to have an American in power in that country for us to be controlling that country, and that's true with when in Vietnam, South Vietnam versus North Vietnam. Obviously, we didn't have an American in control there.
But put Saddam Hussein in power.
Well, there you go. There's another one. That's a much better example. I apologize. But yeah,
we certainly didn't have control over Saddam Hussein. I don't know.
We did for a while.
Yeah, until he went rogue. I mean, that's pretty much common knowledge. But let me ask you, because I'm sorry, I just joined back. Fresh, you're going to vote for Kamala Harris?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I guess we were all talking foreign policy?
Yeah, we're just sort of like bouncing the ball around. Not really like direct what foreign policy is what, you know.
Gotcha. So my question, and I know you guys were talking about Ukraine, and I'm sorry if this question already came up while I wasn't here. But you think that the main reason for the conflict in Ukraine was just, Russia being greedy and powerful?
Well, I don't know about being greedy and powerful. Putin has this idea that he's going to reconstitute the USSR because his mentor was Brezhnev, who was sort of the old guard, the last old guard of the USSR.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all true.
I don't particularly see him as greedy and powerful. I think he, in his mind, is justified because he wants to reconstitute because he believes that is the USSR.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about dictators is
but
that
he's
they like
the
to
aggressor.
Okay, well, I would argue that America is, but I can understand your point.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Reagan era treaty that stated that no former USSR nation would border a NATO nation?
I'm not exactly familiar with that, but I'll take your word if that's what it said.
Yeah. So there's a treaty during the Reagan era that it was after the Berlin Wall and after the
James Baker wrote that.
What'd you say?
James Baker wrote that. He was famous for the line, "We won't move one more inch."
Yeah. So
I'd believe anything you told me James Baker did.
Okay, so what we have done recently under Obama and most recently under Biden is we've expanded NATO to the borders of former USSR countries. And Ukraine is pretty much the last in the region, the last big prize for NATO in the region. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been famously attempting to add Ukraine into NATO. So my question to you would be, in your mind, if you were Putin and you saw a country going back on a treaty that was signed between those two countries decades ago, wouldn't you feel justified in your advance on that nation?
Well, the last two countries to join NATO were Sweden and Finland.
Exactly.
So that doesn't really, and I don't see. I mean, I don't see how that would be a challenge to him at all. I think that he wants to invade.
No, you got to remember, as we add NATO states,
right?
We're not just adding them as a NATO state. Something comes with that, and that's medium and long-range missile systems.
Well, that too.
So the closer we move to their border, our military also grows closer to their border. And my point is, I'm done with nation building. It doesn't work. All we've done is created enemies around the world. We've created resentment around the world. And the whole idea when this started was that, well, we're going to spread democracy throughout the world. We haven't done that. It doesn't work. You can't force democracy down people's throats.
Devastation.
The better way to do it is to be the example for the world, and I don't think we're doing that either. So, I like, and on top of that, I don't believe. I think he plays to his base. Russians love strong leaders. Of course, he's going to play to his base, talk about building the old Soviet Union. He has yet to send an occupation force to Ukraine. He has yet to do that. Nobody can answer me as to why. I've had someone say, well, that's because he can't send one because he could never take over Ukraine. And it's like, okay, well, that defeats your whole point. I mean, you say he's going to
add a point to that, but remember where you're at, just keep going. So, Crimea, right? I heard this recently, that, and you can clap back, Crimea, when they went into Crimea, it was a small army sent in, and not a bullet was shot, not a bullet was fired, and it lasted 4 days. And I think there's a possibility that the way he went to enter Ukraine was under the same intent, that he wasn't going. It seems like he was doing the same thing as Crimea, going in and expecting them to just, because that the kind of point that a lot of Ukrainians are pro-Russian. And the Prime Minister or President of Ukraine that got overthrown with Zelensky, he was pro bringing Russia and Ukraine, together, whether it's country-wise or economically or whatever. I'm not sure, but
I don't know. I don't agree. So I think that would mean that Russia had no intelligence of Ukrainian military forces, and they definitely do, because
that's fair.
I'm not going to say that they're not infested with Russian spies. They are. So they definitely knew that we already had American and British and German armaments there ready for this, right? So I think that he miscalculated. So I think, in my opinion, based on old negotiations we had with them, spreading NATO over the decades, and just and refusing to take the NATO stipulation out of the agreement, because remember, they were going to agree to that. Zelensky was. And then Johnson had a meeting with Biden, and then he had a meeting with Zelensky after that and said no.
No more negotiations.
They didn't have that. Right? I think the whole point of this invasion, and he miscalculated, but I think he was trying to force a peace agreement. Yeah. I don't think he ever wanted to occupy Ukraine, because even if he wanted to, he knows he can't, because he knows the force that we don't necessarily have boots on the ground, but they know what we have there. I see it the same as China. People love to talk about China's going to do this. China's like the only country in the world that hasn't invaded anybody in like 100 years.
It's true.
They may bluster about Taiwan, but that's because they're playing to their base. They're never going to invade Taiwan. And if they do, they're going to be thrown into the fucking sea. Yeah. Same with Putin. Just sign the agreement, make him go home, and if he ever tries to invade Europe, he's going to get fucking obliterated. Yeah.
What was I? Oh, the other thing I wanted to add was 2016 to 2020, Ukraine was the most, on like all over the TV-wise, media-wise, Ukraine was the most corrupt country in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a reason why they wouldn't let them in, was because they were corrupt, but as by the media statements, they, touted
the Bagolga, or is the Bagolga party? What is their side military? Is it the Bagolga party? Their military force that was basically controlled by Nazis, and even their symbol back in the day. You could look at old articles from even ABC and New York Times. They spoke about it back in 2006, 2008, and then they did a rebranding to make themselves not seem like Nazis, but they clearly were.
But the whole quid pro quo deal and all that, it was just like, it just becomes so much obvious, just seems so obvious corruption between Ukraine and the sort of Biden, when Biden was vice president, and then through the Trump first sort of term, when they sort of impeached him for the Ukraine thing, for the quid pro quo.
Yeah, like I said, it's like the same arguments that I had with Republicans about Iraq and Afghanistan. They called me isolationist. They called me an errorist sympathizer. I'm on the side of the errorists. Yeah.
But everything I said then was assumptions or suggestions or observations. If you're going to grab onto it, that's a problem. But it's it kind of seems a bit weird here because of this and because of that. But if you go, if you make it as a statement, then that's where you can't sort of move forward.
Yeah, I think if this
your observations,
if this would be run, because I don't think this would, again, I don't think this would have happened under Trump, and I already stated why. But let's just put another Republican in there. Let's say DeSantis was the president, or whoever, Chris Christie, whoever. The Democrat Party and the left would be against this war.
Yeah.
Because it would be painted by the left and the Democrat Party and the media as this is more Republican neocon imperialism, forcing democracy down the throats of the rest of the world. We need to stop this. We've been trying to stop this for years. This is why we need to have a peaceful foreign policy. but because it's a Democrat and they're trying to win an election, they're suddenly the pro-war party.
Yeah.
So Fresh, my question is like, what do you think, the best solution to this is?
In Ukraine, I mean, there has to be an agreement. But the problem is that Putin will look in your face and tell you there's agreement, and then do what he wants to do. And what are you gonna? And
he said that he could have an agreement right now.
Yeah,
sure he did. I mean,
all he wants is the promise that Ukraine will not be a part of NATO. That's it, and then the conflict's over.
And then he's determining who's in and out of NATO.
Why do you care? It's not your country.
He's not I'm not negotiating that.
It's not your country.
That's pretty much the argument that we're making, is that we have so many damn problems in our own country, and I'm sure. Look, you're an American just like us. You may think more than us, but we have so many goddamn problems in this country.
The Ukrainian people, if we believe we believe in democracy, the Ukrainian people don't give a shit. They wanted peace. That's why they reelected him.
And
the United States decided, we don't give a shit what the voters in Ukraine said. We want conflict because we want Ukraine in NATO. We could end the war tomorrow if we let these countries negotiate their own peace agreement, but because we want to continue being the policemen of the world and we don't agree, we won't allow peace to happen.
And I think
how is that not American imperialism?
The other issue is that once you capitulate,
you can't answer that question, can you?
What is the exact question you're asking?
How is that not American imperialism? Because
if you're extending the idea that that the United States is exerting any influence in any country in the world is imperialism, any influence at all.
No, I didn't say any influence.
Then you're correct.
I didn't say
correct.
Influence.
That isn't
I didn't say any influence. This is military influence.
Are there boots on the ground in Ukraine?
Does it matter? Do we have F-16s?
Yes, for the traditional definition of imperialism, it does.
No,
but if you're expanding imperialism to any military operation or influence in the world,
so answer me this question. Would the war have been over 2 years ago if we didn't provide Ukraine with intelligence, logistics, ammo, weapons, tanks, and F-16s?
Of course, they would have been taken over.
How are we not?
They would have been taken over in 15 minutes by the Russian army. My God.
Okay, so how are we not involved militarily then?
We are involved military. Are there boots on the ground?
You just said we weren't.
No, I said are there military members of the United States on the ground fighting in Ukraine?
What constitutes boots on the ground? Because we do have
military members in their official capacity
there was a
on
term
the ground.
Said that he commented that there was a term that 60 Seconds said that Fresh commented to about the where the boots in the ground comment came up. Would say U.S. imperialism or.
Right. If you're expanding imperialism to beyond boots on the ground, then you're correct in your assessment. That's imperialism.
You realize that we have special forces and intelligence agencies over there before this conflict even started, right?
Sure.
So do those constitute boots on the ground, or does it physically mean our army going there?
Traditional ideas of imperialism means American military members in conflict.
That's new to me because when I talk to commies and Marxists now, they talk about the oppression of American imperialism by American capitalists for the past 50 years by the intelligence agencies, and none of it has to do with any boots on the ground. So you're kind of making a new argument for what constitutes American imperialism.
I'm not a communist or a Marxist, so I don't know what their ideas would be. But
so do you believe that?
But if you're expanding into any military influence,
Do you believe that America should be the policeman of the world and the arbiter of who does what across the globe?
In every country, all over the world? No, of course not. And we couldn't do it.
Why do we have the right to do it in Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, I can think of
Israel and Gaza.
I can think of quite a few Armenians right now that can use our help that are being prosecuted for being Christian in different countries. I can think of a few other countries right now.
Look at the Uyghur Muslims.
South Africa?
Yeah, South Africa. I can think of a lot of countries right now that clearly we don't have an interest in. And like I said, the point of our and theirs and China's and all these other countries' military industrials is just to create America as a stronger economic superpower around the world, and to be not just an influence, but to have our thumb on everybody. And what we're doing right now is we're backing a bear up into the corner. And granted, we may have a trick up our sleeve, we may have a plan, and it may be a plan that works, but it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah, you see, here's my main issue, okay? Because, I know I'm probably going to differ from Kamala here, but when this whole thing went down and they started, funding Ukraine, I said, okay, they're allies. You'd hope that if we needed them, they'd help us in the same way. I don't know if they would, but you want to hope that way. And I said, okay, fund them, help them, defend themselves. That's fine, and I was cool with that. But then when the Biden administration started authorizing and allowing them to conduct strikes with American-made equipment inside Russia, then I took a step back and I said, okay. I said, this isn't defense anymore. Okay. They're now using American money and American-made weapons to attack inside Russia. That's no longer defense in my book, and that's where I draw my line. Okay, so what my question to you, Fresh, as somebody who's going to vote for Kamala, is because she's tied to the decisions that are already been made by the Biden administration regarding this issue. Do you seriously think that she has any inkling of a plan to end this conflict? And if so, what do you think that is?
I think I'm not sure that she has 100%. As 100% has a plan formulated to do it. Vice presidents don't determine foreign policy, so.
Well, this is the woman who.
But she's already generally said that she's going to defend Ukraine.
This is the woman who you want to be president of the United States, though. So my point here is this: is that when I told you before,
I mean, you got a guy that
Well, look, man. I mean, once again, I don't think that
you've
Trump
got a fraudster criminal.
Hold on, Fresh.
That's barely functional.
Fresh.
The guy that we're voting for has a plan, and he said
he doesn't have a plan.
Yes, he does, and he said it.
99% of what he says is complete bullshit.
All right.
And that's your opinion. But he has said
general fact that he lies like 99% of the time.
You can't get up here and say things like that. Like, that's just your opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
that
we're providing you with facts. We're providing you with evidence. We're providing you with historical events. We're providing you with current events.
Can I just throw in here? Here's the difference. I may think I can Kamala, but not once did I say I'm not going to vote for her because I think she's full of shit. I've talked about policy the whole time. And on every live, I always talk about policy. What the left tends to do is when they get caught in a circular argument and they can't get out of it, they resort to the real reason why they're voting for Kamala, because it's blue no matter who.
Oh, as if it's not red no matter who?
No, it's not. I'm not a Republican. So.
99% of the people that say blue no matter who,
I'm not a Republican.
For every Republican their entire life. So
okay, so let me ask you.
That's the most circular. I mean, you just came up with the most circular argument of all time.
Well, let's go around
Hold on. Before you even brought this up, did you not hear me say that I attended anti-war rallies with libertarians and leftists about Iraq? Is that something a Republican voter does?
Not at that time.
No, because I've never been a Republican. I voted twice in my life for one candidate. I haven't voted since. I haven't voted in 12 years.
Yeah, I've only voted Republican once in my life. FYI, as well, fresh.
So again, you're resorting again to some sort of pejorative, or
Well, you resorted to the pejorative with the blue, no matter who,
because
and you don't know how I
told me
voted.
that's your reason for voting for Kamala.
It isn't.
You don't care about policy. You just said, well, he's full of shit. That's the reason you're voting for her. Not because you like her, because you think he's full of shit. You don't care about policy. I do like her. You don't
and I
care
prefer
about
her policies
just
over
admit
his.
that you don't care about
I don't have to admit
policy?
anything.
What is her foreign policy? Because you said
He doesn't know.
prefer.
He doesn't care what her foreign policy
I'm not doing this.
Slow down, everybody.
Nah,
Slow down, guys.
No, hold on. This is
I'm leaving. Nah,
No,
I'm
stay
not
there,
going to be
stay
disrespected. I got
You're
other
not gonna
places
I'm
I
not
can go.
disrespecting us, but yeah.
Dude,
it's like, why can't they just?
It's all right.
Like,
it's all right, guys.
Such a simple
we
question.
did start to kind of echo chamber around him. It did become a kind of a circle jerk, and it was. Yeah,
I don't listen. When you waste time talking to someone for an hour about policy, right? And then it ends in, well, he's full of shit.
Then you know who lost the argument.
Well, then, no, it's not even that. There was no point of having the argument.
We didn't say anything until he said that. So, no, I'm not going to have the echo chamber bull crap. That's bull crap, because nobody said anything echo chamber. I listened and sat here quietly, only said that I was independent. That's not an echo chamber. Everybody's saying different points of views, all that. And then when he said that
sorry,
that
Fresh
about
Rex.
Trump.
I wish it would have gone a little better. Regardless,
Love you, Fresh.
Listen, I warned you guys. I'm tired. My brain is fried. Like, I just can't take it if I waste an hour talking to opposition about policy, strict policy, and then when she can't refute anything any of us have brought up and resorts to, well, he's fucking full of shit. That's the first, in my opinion, because I don't know her. That's the first honest statement she made that was a girl, because the only reason she's not voting for Trump is because she thinks he's full of shit. She doesn't care what Harris's policies are. She doesn't even know what they are. She doesn't care.